5 types of verbal aggression from your partner. Violence is the last resort of an incompetent person. Those were the words of the famous author, Isaac Asimov. Unfortunately, many incompetent people have acquired a tremendous ability to emit verbal aggressiveness. It is difficult to spot and as a result is very dangerous. And verbal aggressiveness in a romantic relationship is unfortunately unique. Love makes us justify words and attitudes that are completely unjustified. But sometimes they are so hard to spot or are so common that we don't even identify them as such. Let's dig deeper. Difficult to spot verbal aggressiveness. Decoding the other person's intentions in a relationship is not simple. In fact, no matter how confident we are, there is always the possibility of making a mistake. Because none of us can be quite sure what the other person is thinking. There is verbal aggressiveness hidden in words and expressions we don't always notice at first glance. Here are a few. Jokes about your family in the form of verbal aggression. It is not uncommon for one partner to ridicule the other person in the relationship. Often they do this by criticizing their family or background, especially if this person is from modest family circumstances, or their parents do not have many resources. But criticism and verbal attacks are not exclusive to this scenario. Poverty is the worst kind of violence. Mahatma Gandhi. This kind of aggressiveness can be very offensive. Without justification or basis, it could create a stigma that can be used at any time. It can be used when they are angry in a social context or at an inconvenient moment. Talking about other people's attractiveness. Talking about other people's attractiveness is not necessarily aggressive. But it's really a problem if they repeat it over a long period of time. If they do it to undermine their partner's self-esteem, it becomes real verbal aggressiveness. Seeing attractiveness in other people is not the problem. However, talking about it all the time and comparing their partner to the people they see is. As a result, they may begin to develop complexes and a sense of inferiority because of how they are treated. Made a caricature of the other person. Many times we create a verbal portrait of our partner as a form of humor caricature. Occasionally we seem like we can read their minds. What happens is that they may repeat this behavior so much over time that it becomes blasphemy. Of course, it will probably end up having a big impact on their partner, cause their self-esteem to decrease. In fact, they may mistake their true self for the caricature. Emotional blackmail. Emotional blackmail is another type of verbal aggression that sometimes goes unnoticed. But it results in big wounds. This way of communicating is very subtle. This is because the person doing it makes the other person think they have to do everything. That they are the one to make the relationship good and productive. All types of emotional blackmail have a specific purpose. The manipulator talks about how they work to make everything good and right. In this way, the victim ends up believing that they are to blame for everything that has happened. And that if it wasn't for their partner, the whole thing would be a real disaster. Gaslighting. Gaslighting is a form of psychological abuse that takes its name from the title of a famous movie. In this scenario, verbal aggressiveness makes the other person doubt their own mental ability, perception and memory. Through lying and manipulation, they create enormous psychological discomfort in the other person. They promote a sense of insecurity and devaluation. Therefore, it is a really complex situation to detect. Therefore, psychologists recommend getting a third opinion from someone outside the relationship. Otherwise, serious problems can arise. Much work and blood would be saved if we opened our hearts. Chief Joseph. No matter how familiar or obvious verbal aggressiveness may be, it is not always easy to recognize it, especially if we are exposed to it. So let's pay attention to our relationship, and especially watch how we communicate. You will save yourself a lot of pain.